Welcome to Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date developments in the global financial world.
Multinational companies such as L'Oreal and Toyota Bushico have reopened their plants and research and development centers in China, showing confidence in the country's efforts to contain the novel coronavirus epidemic. At a production base owned by Paris-based cosmetics giant L'Oreal in the East Chinese city of Suzhou City, work is gradually returned to work. A plant based in Shanghai owned by Toyota, one of the world's three auto seats and trim producers, also resumed its production. The Weipei Zhuhai Chemical Company Limited, the UK oil giant's biggest production base in China, never suspended its production even during the Chinese Lunar New Year holiday. The British Petroleum praised the Chinese government's measures to support the real economy in the process of its fight against the virus. Many multinational companies also started the operation of their research and development centers in China, including the Schneider Electric, a French multinational corporation specializing in electrical equipment, the BASF, a German chemical company, and General Electric, an American multinational conglomerate. Many of the global corporate giants said they are confident about the Chinese market as the governments have taken effective measures to curb the spread of the epidemic and rolled out a lot of tax incentives.
Hundreds of supporters of El Salvador President Nayib Bukele gathered in front of the National Assembly to demand that lawmakers approve 109 million US dollars for security, a loan that is a source of tension between the government and the lawmakers. Bukele's supporters, who were summoned via social media, were led by a former lawmaker of the National Assembly, Walter Araujo. A week ago, Bukele's use of armed soldiers in El Salvador's parliament alarmed political foes and rights groups, with growing fears about democratic backsliding in the crime-ravaged Central American nation. Bukele, 38, showed up in the National Assembly with a group of ununiformed soldiers wielding automatic weapons for a special session he convened amid attempts to pressure parliamentarians to pass his crime-fighting plan. He also warned lawmakers that the people have a right to insurrection. The show of force inside the country's parliament drew condemnation from across the political spectrum and some foreign nations amid worries El Salvador's young democracy may be harmed by presidential overreach. Concerns that Bukele is using troops to intimidate lawmakers comes at a time when leaders of several nations in Latin America, where military rule was common in the 1970s and 80s, are leaning on armed forces to give them a helping hand in domestic politics. Bukele wants lawmakers to agree to a 109 million US dollar loan to help equip police and soldiers in the fight against crime in a nation racked by gang violence. He gave them a week-long deadline to pass the loan legislation without specifying what action he would take if they failed to meet his demands. El Salvador's murder rate has plunged since Bukele took office in July, but remains high.
The US government is considering whether to stop General Electric Company from continuing to supply engines for a new Chinese passenger jet, according to people familiar with the matter, casting uncertainty over China's efforts to enter the civil aviation market. The potential restriction on the engine sales, possibly along with limits on other components for Chinese commercial aircraft, such as flight control systems made by Honeywell International Incorporated, is the latest move in the battle between the world's two largest economies over trade and technology. The issue is expected to come up at an Integrancy meeting about how strictly to limit exports of US technology to China, and at another meeting with members of President Donald Trump's cabinet. The White House and the U.S. Commerce Department, which issues license for such exports, declined to comment, as did a GE spokesperson. The Departments of Defense, State, Energy and Treasury did not respond to requests for comment. The CFM LEAP engine is a joint venture between GE and France's Safran Aircraft Engines. The proposal to halt the deliveries of engines was also reported by the Wall Street Journal. Safran did not immediately respond to a request for comment, and French government officials could not be reached for comment. Aside from aircraft engines, flight control systems are up for discussion at the February meetings. Honeywell International has received licenses to export flight control systems to COMAC for the C919 for about a decade, and one was approved in early 2020. But future permission for such sales for COMAC's passenger aircraft may be up for debate. The flight control system operates moving mechanical parts such as the wing flaps from the cockpit. A spokesperson for Honeywell declined to comment. At the heart of the debate over a possible crackdown on the sale of US parts to China's nascent aircraft industry is whether such shipments would fuel the rise of a serious competitor to US-based Boeing company or boost China's military capabilities. People familiar with the matter said some administration officials are concerned the Chinese could reverse engineer some items, though others say an abundance of LEAP engines in China has not brought that about to date. If the United States were to move ahead with the measure, China could retaliate by ordering more planes from Airbus SE rather than crisis-hit Boeing, which relies on China for a fourth of its deliveries. The Trump administration's meetings about technology issues also are set to include a discussion of whether to impose further restrictions on suppliers to Huawei Technologies, the world's largest telecommunications equipment maker, which is on a US trade blacklist.
U.S. White House advisor Ivanka Trump praised women's economic participation in the United Arab Emirates during a keynote address at the Global Women's Forum in the city of Dubai. She went on to thank Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the ruler of Dubai, for his strong and steadfast commitment on this matter. Trump began her trip to the UAE in Abu Dhabi, where she visited the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque. She also toured the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum and met with female business leaders there.
This has been Business Review, your daily source for the most critical stories in the economic world. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.